Hello and welcome to the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast. In this second season of the show, host Jorden Guth is joined by a new guest each episode who knows something about hi-fi that Jorden doesn't. And who knows, while he's learning about all of this, you might learn something too. So with no further ado, here's Jorden and this week's guest.
Hi, everybody. I'm not Brent Butterworth, and I'm not Dennis Berger. I'm Doug Schneider, the voice on what we're now calling Season 1 of the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast. That is all past. Dennis and Brent aren't on the podcast anymore, as Brent let everybody know he's gone to work for the Wirecutter, and it was a very amicable parting, but he just couldn't do the podcast anymore. But Dennis, he's still part of the podcast. Behind all this, he's producing it. He just didn't want to be upfront to everybody. So he said, hey, be the producer. We're going to call this Season 2, and let's bring in Jorden Guth.
Hey everyone, my name is Jorden Guth. I'm relatively new to the hi-fi space in the sense of learning about the technology and learning about the speakers and kind of the history and heritage behind hi-fi. In the last, I'm going to say 10 years, Doug, 10, 12 years.
Pretty close to 10 years, because you're not that new to it because you've been part of our video team.
That's exactly it. So I've been working with Doug on the video team as part of the video team, traveling all around the world and meeting very interesting characters throughout the hi-fi space for close to a decade now, if not over a decade. All through which I've kind of been learning and being exposed to hi-fi and what hi-fi is and all of that stuff. Over the last, I'm going to say like year or so, started kind of going into SoundStage a little bit more with the video team.
And you produced fully our SoundStage Central update. You've had two,
yeah,
and
that's true.
When people listen to this, there's going to be a third one online with Kathleen. You produced that fully, shot it, produced it, everything.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So on the video team, I'm usually the man behind the cameras, or at least one of them. For the SoundStage Central, I'm not only behind the cameras, I'm also producing it, getting everything set up, editing, and delivering it.
And which companies have you come on trips with us to?
Oh, man. So I had a feeling you were going to ask this, and I started trying to write them down, and I lost track. I believe the first one was Martin Logan. So Martin Logan, Anthem.
Right. In Toronto, because...
In Toronto.
Yep. Martin Logan panel speakers, et cetera, all manufactured in Toronto. A lot of people don't know that, but they are made there in the same factory that makes Paradigm.
And a massive warehouse.
Yeah, massive warehouse in there. Lots of production, and they make Anthem electronics there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those were like a interesting first look into hi-fi because it's the electrostatic speakers.
Yep, electrostatic.
Yeah, very cool. Like the thin sheet of material. So those were definitely, I think, the first companies. Since then, it's been everywhere from Montreal with Sim Audio and Totem, all the way through the States. I think you brought us on a trip to the CES a few years back. So
yep. Did you come to Europe? Because you're coming in March with us.
Yeah. We went to Europe. We went. We did a couple trips to England, I think.
Yeah. You were there at KEF. When we shot with
KEF.
Johan Korg and Jack Oakley.
Oh man. Johan, amazing guy. And
Legend.
Absolutely. And Jack, who is a mad scientist, super helpful, super patient with me because I was asking a lot of questions of him, and he was very helpful in answering them. And I mean, to this day, I think the Blades are probably my favorite set of speakers I've ever heard, and probably one of the coolest set that I've ever seen. And where else? The Netherlands. We went through Dutch and Dutch.
Dutch and Dutch, yep, the active speakers, that's right. Crystal Cable Siltec in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And then we're going away at the end of March to Monitor Audio. I don't think were you with us at Monitor Audio when we went there? Yeah, you went to Monitor. So this is your second time to Monitor Audio. Then we're going to Vivid Audio. And then we're going back to Crystal Cable and Siltec in the Netherlands. So we're going to do the UK and we're going to do Netherlands in one trip.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I think Monitor Audio is another one of the big ones for me. Seeing the amount of design work that they do in their office. They basically had that entire second building that was their design team kind of creating the new products and doing all that. I thought that was really cool.
So yeah, here's maybe 2 or 3 reasons Jorden was brought on to do this. One, he has experience with audio. The places he's been, I would say you've been to more places than many reviewers have, and you have more insight into that. But you also ask a lot of questions. And I know Dennis, as producer, kind of interviewed you, and he asked the right questions. He asked this and that when I talk about amplifiers and whatnot. So you're the right guy to do this, because I'm not going to be leading this. In fact, I'm not going to be in the next episode. It's going to be you with someone else. Maybe Jeffrey Morrison on traveling with headphones to follow up on an article he wrote on SoundStage Solo. But you ask the right questions. You have insight. And this is the thing about our video team. The video guys were not audiophiles starting this out, but they got into it. So they don't just go there. They get into it, and you hang out with the companies and you do all kinds of things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think pretty funny, like my background in consumer electronics, like going through university, I used to work for Best Buy. And then after that, I worked for the corporate side of Apple and startups and all of that. But like back in the day, my idea of what hi-fi was frankly Bose, because that was like the highest end, the most expensive stuff that you could buy at Best Buy. But to be honest, like I didn't know any better.
Bose makes excellent headphones and earphones. Excellent. They really do.
Well, and the active noise canceling is still, to my understanding, like one of the best, if not the best out there.
Yeah. Fantastic headphones. Audiophiles tend not to like the speakers. Yeah. And people think that Bose makes the best speakers in the world. And that's kind of what gets most audiophiles, I think.
Well, I think that is a byproduct of just how good their marketing is. And
it's outstanding.
Yeah, and their visibility. Like they're in these shops, they're in the conversation. Whereas a lot of these companies, I didn't even know they existed until either you told me we were going to interview them, or in passing, I've asked you something about like, who does this? And you're like, oh, this company here does that certain thing.
And so this is
definitely has. Sorry,
this is another reason. This is another reason we brought you on, because you have insight like this, because you're youngish and people are always talking about getting young people into audio. And you and Chris, who leads the video team, are younger than most audiophiles. And you guys have a lot of insight. And one of the first things Chris said to me on a video shoot was, these companies are really cool, but nobody knows who they are. Yeah, none of these 100%. Names. And this is branding. And you've got good awareness on branding and that sort of thing. You guys both worked at Best Buy at time in your life, and you're aware of brands that are out there. And this is a pet peeve of mine. Most hi-fi companies don't brand well at all.
No, not at all. And it's kind of interesting you say that, because like literally my world of hi-fi was Bose. And to a degree, like growing up, my dad had like a record player and integrated amp and all that, and it was Technics, right?
Yeah, Technics is excellent.
Yeah, so like that was my understanding, and I didn't see past that. But then you go to some of these companies, or you start learning about some of these companies, and you're like, you guys have amazing stories. You have like really good products, but for whatever reason, and I have some thoughts on why it's not working, but it's not getting out to the mass audience.
That's something I wanted to ask you. What are your thoughts in what you've seen so far, kind of from the outside coming in?
Outside coming in. I think, how could I put this? So when I think of hi-fi, high fidelity, right? Nowadays, pretty much everything is high fidelity to some degree, right? Like the least or the lowest quality of speakers and headphones today is probably, and correct me here, but like it's probably on par with like a mid-range set of speakers or headphones from 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, from what I see, okay, you can still buy crap today.
Yes,
utter crap.
100%.
But the inexpensive products, they know so much about designing speakers. You get speakers for a couple $100 even. Headphones like the AKG K371s that are $150. And stuff priced even lower can be designed exceptionally well because they know a lot. Yes, so a lot has come up just through knowledge and experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the 70s, 80s, whatever, like when people were producing like absolute garbage and selling absolute garbage, Well, hi-fi made sense. There was that distinction. There was the KEFs. There was the people out there that were like producing high quality stuff to give that really high fidelity sound. Nowadays, the barrier to entry is much lower. So then it's kind of this question of like, why hi-fi? Like, why would I spend $30,000 on a speaker system? And there's the idea of the function. So to like listen to music, listen to all these things. And then there's the idea of the experience. So I do that because when I'm doing it and when I have this particular $30,000 system, I have a great experience. I have these great feelings. I have these emotions that come through that I don't have when I'm listening to my, I don't know, Beats Pill or whatever wireless systems are out there these days.
And those are crap. I'll just say those little things,
junk.
They're utter crap, you know?
They are junk. That I at least know.
But, you know, you brought up an excellent point, and this has been a pet peeve of mine. I'm pretty active on social media, but a $30,000 system or a $30,000 product and something that almost all companies, not all, but almost all are horrendous at is explaining to the consumer why this is $30,000. That's a lot of money. They just throw it out there like, oh, here's a $30,000 amplifier. Isn't it nice? Maybe you want to explain why it's 30 grand. That's a lot of money.
Well, like I think about that, and I think about like, let's go Ferrari, right? Like Ferrari, premium product, amazing cars. The entry Ferrari is like what, $200,000?
I have no idea because I'm not into cars really. I drive a Honda CR-V.
There you go. That being said, you know Ferrari, you know the brand.
Yes, everybody knows it.
Everyone knows it.
Porsche.
Now, not everyone's buying Ferraris.
Yeah.
Not everyone can tell you the benefits of the Ferrari, but it has that kind of brand awareness, and it's tied to that experience of like, well, driving a Ferrari, you probably have this great experience. So I don't see any hi-fi companies really going down that route of truly selling the experience, but also offering something that gets people into their brand. So if we think about Ferrari, not everyone's driving Ferraris, but people are buying Ferrari shirts.
Yeah, they're aspiring to it. Yeah,
exactly. So they're aspiring to this experience, this function. A lot of hi-fi brands that I'm seeing, the entry point to their product is in the, let's say, I don't know, $10,000 range. Now, why is that worth that extra amount of money compared to a similar product that's in the hundreds of dollars price range?
Yeah.
So to get somebody in there, they have to commit to spending, let's say, I don't know, $5,000 that first time to get them into a brand. And then from that, if your lowest price on the brand is $5,000 and you go up to like a $30,000 amp or something like that, once you're in the brand, you'll probably notice some of the differences. You'll probably have pet peeves on your product, and you want the little bit better sound here or the little bit better experience there, and you can kind of move up. I just don't see a lot of brands doing a great job at introducing people to hi-fi, explaining why it's better, why the experience will be better, and then offering people kind of that gateway product to get them going with that brand.
Right. Now, yeah, so let me pose this question. I'm kind of, we'll see your response, and I kind of know, but okay, you're into it now for a few years. You're kind of a little more experienced, but if somebody came to you and you've had a good job for many years, you can afford stuff, but say, oh, I want to get into hi-fi, Doug. Okay. You ready to drop 30,000? What would have you thought? $30,000 for a system. Yeah. What would have been your response?
Well, so here's the thing. If you ask me like, what can I do for $30,000 like 15 years ago, let's say, or probably more than that, probably like 17 years ago when I was working at Best Buy, I would have brought you over to the Bose system and I would have said, you can spend whatever. I don't even know. It's like $3,000 at the time for the top of the line Bose system. If you ask me that today, I would say, well, you know what? Probably for like 15,000, you can get an unbelievable system that will sound incredible. It'll look awesome, and you'll have a really great experience. If you want to spend 30, there's stuff out there. I still don't know enough about the minute differences to explain to you why something like, I don't know.
KEF blade.
Yeah, KEF blade. Like, actually, those blades
are so cool. They look like it.
They look amazing. They look absolutely incredible. And not only that, like, that was actually the speaker system. When I heard those for the first time, I was floored. I was like, this is a totally different experience. I had never heard, I think it was Radar Love that they put on, because that's my driving song.
Could have been, yeah.
And I was like, this is like unbelievable. And
the KEF blade's a bad example because that's a speaker that looks amazing. And anybody who sees it goes, oh, wow, that thing must cost a lot. Okay, so you see a box speaker. Okay.
Yeah, actually, KEF's a great example of a company, right? So you have the KEF blades. That is the speaker system that
I don't
personally...
but pretend I... Yeah. I had a pair for review, Blade 2s, actually, but I don't have them yet. Yeah.
Right? But like, that is a system, a speaker set that I aspire to own personally. Like, one day when I win the lottery, or I don't know, am the next, who knows, making big money, blades are a system that I aspire to.
Well, that was a genius product. It originated, I don't know if you know this history, but I'm trying to think if it was 2012. They showed something called the Concept Blade, and it was all carbon fiber. And they said, they showed it in Munich, and they said, this isn't a real product. We're just kind of showing it. It was to kind of test it, right? Yeah. And everybody went, oh, wow, that's amazing. And I think people thought it would be about $90,000 per pair at the time if it came out, but nobody was anticipating it. But then 2 years later, I believe, they came out with the blade, made it out of a composite cabinet, was down to about $30,000 or so. And everybody just went, that is the coolest thing. Like, they're awesome. They hit it out of the park with that one because it's a genius design. It just looks different. Yeah. And it looks like its name. It looks like a knife blade, right? It's just cool. You want that in like a really nice condo. And then it sounds fantastic.
I don't think I have the ears of a reviewer at this point in my life to be able to say, like...
You're lucky because most reviewers are over 70 and they don't have your ears. Okay, they think they do.
There you go.
They think they do. You're lucky you don't have the ears of most reviewers. That's another pet peeve of mine that I put on. And when all these 70-year-old reviewers are talking about it, the feathery highs and stuff, I'm thinking, come on, I'm almost 60. You can't hear that. I'm doing everything I am to protect my hearing. So you're lucky you don't have the ears of a reviewer.
That is fair. Maybe I should say the taste of the reviewer.
Okay, there we go.
I don't know enough about... my ears are not trained. Let's say that. I might have a little bit more frequency left.
That's a different thing. Trained listening is a different thing. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, and... So I couldn't tell you, like, I believe when we were at KEF, they put on the Muon, the really, really big one. Looked like, I mean, that looks awesome as well. Like they really nailed it.
Big chrome thing.
They nailed the industrial design. But me personally, I wouldn't be able to tell you the listening experience differences between those two. The blades for me were like lights out incredible. The Muon sounded great, like, don't get me wrong, but I didn't have that kind of leap in quality in my mind listening to that relative to listening to the
right.
blades.
And this comes with experience. It's like you with video stuff. You know, people look at cameras and stuff like that. They can't tell if they're not familiar, but then you start using it. You start listening here, listening there, and you say, okay, I hear this, that, more I don't, or whatever, or this is better. So that's more an experience thing.
Yeah, that's it. Now, going back there, so KEF blades. Blades are what I aspire to own.
This is going to be the Blade episode. It's gone that way.
Yeah, free press for KEF there. But that's what I aspire to own. But realistically, listening to the LS50s.
Yeah, the little LS50s. Yeah,
the LS50s. Those are the speakers that I'm probably going to buy in the next couple of years.
Yeah,
right. Like, they are also really good. They look great. My wife doesn't hate the design, and I think I have enough space to actually fit them somewhere because they're not massive.
You know what's interesting? There's a theme here, and KEF's not the only company, but it is one of the great hi-fi companies right now doing things right. When you look at the LS50, I don't know what the price is today, but I'm thinking $1,500 per pair in the United States.
Yeah, something like that, $1,300.
People can buy that, and it looks accessible. Cool. It's accessible and it looks cool. It looks like you've bought something Cool. It's got the UniQ driver. It comes in different colors. They got the active version for more now.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. But KEF, I think, is one of the few companies that really understands that whole industrial design, pricing, performance. They got it all together.
Yeah. And to take that one step further, so LS50s, I am likely to buy those in the next, I don't know, couple of years. Once my kids, I trust them not to like poke their fingers in anything.
And they might.
Yeah, and they might. Exactly. So I'll wait for that phase to pass. But at the time, they had also launched their KEF egg.
That little tiny thing. Yeah.
The little tiny thing. So that I bought.
Like, oh, really? Like computer speakers?
Yeah. Yeah. And I use those in our living room right now as kind of the main system for the living room because they're small, they're nice, they sound significantly better than whatever I had previously. Some like out of Best Buy kit something or other. I don't even know. Might have been like, probably not Panasonic. Maybe like Sony speakers.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some junk. Like these KEF eggs, they sound good. But if I think about that, I didn't know that KEF was a thing until, I don't know, like a couple months before we went there.
Yeah. So even KEF doing a great job could get their name more out there.
For sure. B&W also do really good jobs of this.
Yeah.
Like they have a broad enough
it's
product.
Not B&W, it's Bowers and Wilkins.
Bowers and Wilkins. Sorry.
They're always telling us. They're correcting. We're not B&W anymore. We're Bowers and Wilkins.
Bowers and Wilkins, Bang & Olufsen. I always mix those two up as well because they're so close. Both of them have enough of a product range and enough of a mainstream kind of presence that you can get in with a set of Bauer and Wilkins headphones for what, like $300, $400?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yep.
Yeah. And then you could work up from there. And they still, to my understanding, sell like $15,000 systems and all of this.
Oh, and more. They got the Nautilus that Lauren Sticky designed. Yeah, and they got the 801s up at about 30, 35,000 per pair. Yeah. No, they got the full range. That's another company that, and you weren't on that trip. We were there with Jeremy and Chris. We went there in November to Bowers, and I was kind of blown away in England that they're making it all there.
Lauren Sticky isn't there anymore, right?
No. Lauren Sticky is down the road in Brighton, and we're going to be visiting Lawrence. He designed the Nautilus, and a few years later in the 90s, he left to get into pro audio. And actually then a few years after that, he founded Vivid Audio with Philip Guttentag. And so Vivid Audio is still his thing to kind of progress the Nautilus ideas.
So I was very fortunate. Lauren Sticky was another person that I asked a lot of uneducated, unknowing, naive questions to at that CES that we went to. I actually filmed him doing a presentation. I think it was for Mola. Yeah,
it was. They were in the same room, I think. Yeah.
Or maybe that's what it was. Anyways, incredibly smart guy and like some really, really cool stuff. That's another eye-opening experience for me where it's like, oh, like this is audio. And those speakers, by the way, are the coolest.
The Vivids. Yeah, the Gias and stuff like that. Yeah.
God, they look awesome.
And so even the best of these companies, I think people could know more about. That's really the thing. And that's one of the reasons we travel and do these videos is to kind of create these videos. But I think the companies themselves could do more. That's a pet peeve I have. Too many companies assume you know their products, but to get your product known today is really hard.
Well, and I think there's a couple levels there. There's this idea of like, you need your products known by the mainstream audience. So for somebody that's outside of the audio industry, I didn't know, and I don't think I could ever know all the different audio companies that are out there. But the more that I'm exposed to them, the more I might be interested, the more I might tag on to a brand, and then kind of throughout my life as I get more disposable income, as the kids grow up, be tied to that particular product or that particular company's products. So I think that's one of those things where I still don't see a whole lot of audio companies doing that.
And for everyone out there, we had no idea we were talking about KEF today. I did not know KEF was going to come up. But obviously, KEF had an impact on you.
Oh my!
The products.
And
100%. That's interesting. I'm gonna write to Jack I'm going to write to Stephanie, who's with KEF, and say, hey, did you know you had this impact on this guy? Because it's probably a testament that they're doing something right.
Yeah. So at this point, I think I've fanboyed over enough companies and enough different speaker systems. Doug, do you want to just take a little break and listen to some of the music that we have in our new PMC audio, or which is it, an Insight?
Yeah, it's an Insight. And in the past, this is kind of a difference. Now, before we used music, I think that Brent primarily played on or with somebody else, but Brent's gone. So we're going to put a little bit of the royalty-free music that's in the new PMC 25i series Insight video. But I personally pick these because the music that goes in those videos is important to the way the whole video flows.
Yeah,
let's do that.
Awesome. So we'll segue into that. And then after the little break, we'll jump in and talk about the Florida Audio Expo and the coverage you got there. So now we're back from the break, a little bit of music to kind of lighten the mood and give you some time to reflect on the last little segment there. Doug.
Yep.
Florida Audio Expo.
Florida International Audio Expo as of this year. It was Florida Audio Expo in 2019 when it started. 2020, 2021, it was canceled due to COVID. 2022, it came back. And now 2023, it is officially Florida International Audio Expo.
Awesome. So the Florida International Audio Expo, we haven't really had a chance to catch up. That being said, you did mention that there was 3 speaker systems or speakers or products. I'll kind of leave it more broad that were really interesting to you in your visit there.
Yeah, so Florida International Audio Expo is held in Tampa. And this isn't a huge show. It's a small show, but it's no longer regional. They're attracting an international audience. And Florida in February is killer for weather. And that's kind of one of the reasons it got itself established and people like going there. But now it's attracting more and more companies to exhibit there. They have a good local and international flavor for what goes on there. And Hans Wetzel was with me and we did a show report in you can find on SoundStage Global that shows all the coverage. And from that, we select what we call the best of Florida International Audio Expo 2023. We do this after most shows. We select the best. And there were 3 speakers and kind of one speaker system, and I'll tell you how that gets differentiated, that were picked as the best products there. And it just happened to be that they were all speakers. Sometimes we do electronics, turntables, whatever, but it was 3 speakers that really stood out.
Okay. What are they? Let's hear it.
That's the first one. It's a really tiny company in Tampa called Soundfield Audio, and I think you would really like this.
Oh, yeah?
It's called the Obelisk T710 speaker system. And it's a speaker system because it's only sold in pairs. It's active. Okay. It has built-in amplification, analog and digital inputs. It's all kind of in the boxes. Okay, you can't just buy one speaker. You have to buy it as a system, and then you just give it a digital source. And it's this, Hans described it as a fully active, variable directivity loudspeaker system sold as a pair comprising a primary speaker and a secondary speaker. And then in my report, I said that, or in my best of thing, it has 5 drivers. On the front baffle are a planar magnetic tweeter, which is kind of a flat tweeter, a CAS coaxial driver. So that's a tweeter in a mid-range. Okay. And on the rear of the panel is a wideband 3-inch driver. Wideband meaning it covers the whole frequency range. And then it has a 7-inch woofer near the bottom of the cabinet and a 10-inch woofer under the cabinet.
Okay.
And
now, what is the variable what was it?
Variable directivity. I just realized.
Variable directivity. What is variable directivity? What does that mean?
It has actually 6 drivers because it's a coaxial driver. That has a tweeter and a thing. So we might have to revisit that. But what it has is the variable directivity. Good question. It has 3 modes: narrow, wide, and omni.
I get
and
it.
as you change it kind of what's right is how it works best in the room.
Yeah.
And also maybe the music and also your taste. So the narrow mode tends to make it arranges the drivers so that when I say arranges the drivers, doesn't move them, but how it uses them for output. So that it's more like a traditional loudspeaker. It focuses the energy mostly to the front of the speakers. So it's got a more focused projection to the front, less to the sides and rear.
So it's basically adjusting the amount of output for the different speaker or the different tweeters or mid-range or whatever based on the mode that you're selecting.
Yes. Yes. And so the narrow kind of more like traditional speakers, most of the energy directed towards the listener. The wide spreads the energy more to the sides, more energy to the sides. You get more reflected sound. And then omni, basically the speakers radiate more or less evenly all around themselves. So you get a very wide and spacious sound. And what will work best is, like I said, listening habits, but also your room. If you have a highly reflective room, maybe the omni will be too reflective. You'd have to try it. Narrow might be better. If you have a more absorbent room, you'd have to really try it, but you just kind of flick the switches or however you do it on the system, and it changes those modes just on the fly.
Interesting. Okay. So I guess one thing that I'm always curious about with these speakers is who is like that target audience? Like, who are the people that would buy those speakers? And do you imagine somebody like buying those speakers and actually changing the settings on the day to day? Or would somebody like buy them, set it up once and probably never kind of adjust it again?
That's a really good question because truth be told, I don't know. And this is kind of when you see a lot of these products, you say, who is going to buy this? Now, I would hope that somebody who buys this kind of gets alerted by my show report and Hans's report, kind of says, well, that sounds interesting and I'm serious about this and I'm going to look into it because Soundfield Audio isn't a brand name. And in fact, it's a tiny little company in Tampa. So it's not one of the bigger hi-fi brands. So you'd have to go seeking out, desiring this particular speaker and what it does. And I would say it's a pretty serious audiophile who would then say, no, this is what I want. And they're also trusting their own gut instinct because they're not going to be going off reputation or anything. They're going to be going off, nope, I like what this company does. I trust what this company does. So it's going to be a pretty independent-minded audiophile. And will they switch the sounds in their room? It might depend on the music, to be honest. Interesting.
What's the price point on these? What's the price point?
Yeah, I missed that. $15,000 for the pair.
$15,000
as a system. So these have the amplifiers built in and all that type of thing. So you really have to give it a digital source.
Got it.
Or an analog or a turntable, whatever. So you don't have to worry about amplification. So it's not cheap, but it's also not exorbitant in hi-fi terms.
Yeah. 15 years ago, that price would have I would have been shocked. Now I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like I can imagine that. One of the things you said is it might not be it might be an independent mind audiophile that takes a chance on this.
They're basically taking I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but an unknown company and a kind of peculiar design, they're taking a chance.
Yeah. And it's how many people would this system be their first kind of entrance into hi-fi?
That's interesting. I would say probably very few because those people who get their first entrance into hi-fi are going to go on referral and most people are going to refer a better known brand.
Got it. So this might be a secondary system in somebody's house or a cottage or...
Oh, no, I think it's going to be the experienced audiophile who's been through a lot, says, I'm going to take a chance on what this does.
Okay.
They're going to be seeking a specific sound. I think somebody new to it they would be unknown. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's really cool.
Now,
number two.
Number two is an interesting company because have you ever heard of TAD, Technical Audio Devices?
TAD? No.
Have you ever heard of Pioneer?
TNA.
But
yes,
have you ever
Pioneer.
heard of
Yes.
Okay, so here's how TAD started. And it's on their website. Technical Audio Devices, TAD, was originally the name given to a project launched by Tokyo-based Pioneer Electronic Corporation in 1975 to develop high-end speakers for professional use.
Interesting.
So this basically came out of Pioneer. They're high-end, and they're known for their professional drivers. And we say professional stuff that goes in recording studios.
Got it.
Really demanding, really exacting, that sort of thing. Now, TAD spun off as its own thing in 2007. Okay, to be a speaker company designed for consumers. You could use them in the studio too. In fact, when I was flying down to Tampa, I was watching an ABBA documentary about where they've been for the last 40 years. And their chief recording engineer, who they've trusted, there he was with a pair of TAD speakers at his mixing console.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Which is really cool. So it's kind of, they're established in the pro world, but they haven't really been entrenched in the hi-fi world. I think in North America from poor representation in North America. They haven't had great distributors. They haven't had this. But now there's a Massachusetts-based company I have called, we'll just leave it at that, down in the U.S., Pro Audio Design, a company that makes professional loudspeakers with TAD drivers, but also designs studios and does acoustics and all that type of thing, has taken on the TAD brand in North America with an effort to distribute it in the pro and hi-fi circles. So this is a pretty well-established company. So they got money behind them, and they're promising to make TAD finally a thing in North America. And it's headed by Dave Malekpour. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's the president of this. And I talked to him at length. But the speaker in particular is called the Reference 1 TX. It's a stand mount speaker, not cheap. $32,500 per pair without stands, $35,000 per pair with dedicated stands, but it's got TAD's proprietary coaxial driver. That's where the tweeter goes inside the mid-range, a woofer. It's a super, super high-end stand-mounted speaker. And Hans Wetzel wrote about them and loved the sound of it.
Very cool.
And it's, you can ask me who's going to buy this?
Yep, 100%. Is it going to be the at-home recording artist?
Unlike, could be. It could be if they got the money. TAD, I'm saying it hasn't had great representation in the United States, particular in North America as a whole. Canada's a much smaller market. But it is a name that people know and respect. It's this Japanese company. People have known it since, the pioneer days as making really, really high-end products. So you could get a recommendation. So if somebody with a lot of money, $35,000 for small speakers, smallish on stands is a lot of money, goes to a friend and says, hey, I'm looking at these TAD speakers. Oh yeah, I've heard of TAD and they have the money and that sort of thing. It could get into that kind of person's home if they're not an audiophile already. And for serious audiophiles who want perhaps the best stand-mounted speaker, this could be one of them. I'm not going to say it's cool. It, but I mean somebody who just says, you know what, this is an amazing speaker. I'm going to buy a pair of these. So it's got a potential market. Obviously, though, somebody has to have money, and you need your amplifiers and source and all that sort of thing. It's a passive design, but it's an evolution from the original CE1, which was successful for them, and now it's called the CE1 TX, and sold globally, but with better distribution in North America. We could be seeing some on this side.
That's very interesting. I'm legitimately just looking up the speakers right now, and they look really nice in this like cherry wood kind of finish.
Yeah, and they've got those sides actually. A port on a loudspeaker vents the bass to increase the bass. The vents are actually on the side. You're probably seeing side panels on the speaker, and they actually come out a little bit, and the vents are on the side. They vent front and rear. It's a very, very cool design. Coaxial mid-range tweeter and that woofer on front. It's beautifully built. It's, I'm going to say, worth its money. You don't kind of look at it and say, why does that cost $35,000? You see it and you go, wow, that must cost a lot.
You feel the build quality.
Yeah.
And then the last one, wrapping it up.
Another passive speaker, and by passive, I mean you need amplification, the Falcon Acoustics M10. Now, who is Falcon Acoustics? Started in the 70s by a person named Malcolm Jones, and you'll like this. Malcolm Jones's claim to fame is he was KEF's first employee. He wasn't the founder. He was KEF's first employee in the 60s, and I guess he was responsible for many of KEF's drive unit designs back in the early era. Okay, he became a legend. And then in 1972, he founded Falcon Acoustics. Now, in 2009, he retired and sold it to a friend of his named Jerry Bloomfield, who still runs the company under Falcon Acoustics' original mandate. And what a lot of Falcon Acoustics, what they did was recreate a lot of the KEF drivers. Okay, there's a legendary one called the B110 that was used in this famous speaker designed by the BBC called the LS35A. It's this little 5-inch mid-range woofer, polypropylene cone. They've made that for years. They've made all kinds of KEF parts and parts for loudspeakers. And I think about 8 years ago, they got into making their own full loudspeaker systems. In fact, this is way before your time. They made a replica of the BBC LS35A. And what happened in the 70s was the BBC came out with these speaker designs for their own use in studio. But then they allowed companies licensed to design, and companies would build them and sell them as their own.
That's how the LS50 got built, right?
Well, it had a heritage from the LS35A. That was kind of the tie-in. And the original LS35A used the KEF 110 driver.
Got it.
Okay, so there's that tie-in. And many companies that came out with LS35As, but what Falcon Acoustics did a few years ago was build the most authentic replica to the spec possible. The exact wood, the exact drivers, the exact everything that the BBC spec'd out. They came out with their own version of the LS35A, and it's pretty fantastic. But the M10 is their own design, a little two-way speaker with a 1-inch tweeter, their B110 driver, their own KEF designed, Falcon Acoustics made B110 driver, and it's this little speaker for $22.95 per pair, so $2,300 per pair. Yeah. That has a really big sound. You hear them, and it's kind of that little tiny speaker that you go, is there a subwoofer playing? Because they have this ballsy, bassy sound. Now, they need a little bit of amplifier power behind them, but they're the ideal and a small speaker, and they got a retro look. They got that UK hi-fi look. For a small to medium-sized room, some condo-type apartment, small room somewhere, fantastic little speaker, and I heard it in Florida, and I also heard it previously in Warsaw when I was at that audio show in November. And I said, this is a really, really, really good speaker. I'm going to put it as one of the best at Tampa, because it was.
Interesting. And they also have a nice little rosewood look to it, or a couple
$100 more. You can get the rosewood version, and you can see, if you're looking at it right now, you can see it's got the retro vibe.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's a modern speaker. Unlike the LS35A, which is a replica of the BBC design, designed to spec. This is their own design as a two-way speaker. So it wasn't created in the 70s and made now. It's designed now, and it's their latest speaker, and a very good speaker.
Oh, that looks awesome. All right. Well, with that, we covered quite a lot today. Was there anything else that you want to touch on?
Not really. I just want to reiterate what I said at the beginning. You're taking over this podcast in the sense of you're going to be on with somebody. I'm not going to be back. Maybe I will be at some episode, but it's going to be primarily you. And what I want you to do is ask the tough questions. I know we say that, but I want you to really dive deep. I want you to explore. But what I want to do, I think it'll be interesting for people to have, like I said, you're young. You've got some experience in hi-fi, quite a bit. Actually, like I said, you've been to more hi-fi companies than most reviewers have. But you have an inquisitive way about you. In other words, you dig deep. You ask the questions, and you ask the right questions. So that's what I want to see for this season.
Awesome. Well, I will do my best, and we'd love to have you back on. I'd love to have you back on to kind of teach me more, or anything else that we want to talk about.
I'm getting the new Samsung S23, just so you know. 200 megapixel camera. Yeah, you'll see it on the next trip. You'll be jealous. Envious, I should say.
I certainly will be envious of the extra megapixels, that's for sure.
I'm always learning. You know what? This is kind of an audiophile thing. Look up the, we'll talk about this next time. Look up the definitions of envy and jealousy, okay? Yeah. And then listen to Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield. It's the perfect way to teach the meaning of the two words. We'll talk about that next time.
That's awesome. So that's my homework until the next podcast. And we don't know exactly who is going to be on.
I think Jeff Morrison.
Jeff Morrison? Okay. So we do know who's going to be on. And until next time, stay safe.
Carry on the tradition that Brent and Dennis, and I just want to finish off with that. They did an amazing job getting this podcast going. They did beyond my expectations. So, hey, now you got, big things to live up to.
Yeah.
Not putting you on the spot or anything.
Big shoes to fill. And I am very thankful Dennis is still kicking around and is helping me out behind the scenes to make sure that I have all the confidence I need and everything that's needed to get this going. So until next time, stay safe, everyone, and talk to you later.
Thanks, Jorden.